And a big welcome into a special edition of the Backstretch. We don't have boots on. We're not going to walk the backstretch. We're going to sit right here at the XBTV desk. Jeff Siegel and Aaron Vercruysse with a special guest, Tim Ritvo, COO of the Stronach Group, fresh in from Baltimore. And I'm guessing you're dry by now, yeah?
Yeah, finally. I kind of brought some rain back with me yesterday. But yeah, all's good. And it was a great event against pretty much as tough of conditions as we could have been thrown at us.
Give me some of the highlights from Baltimore. And I've been to all three Triple Crown events, and the city of Baltimore really does roll out the red carpet for not only Stronach, but the race fan themselves for Preakness Week. Give me some of the highlights from Baltimore.
Yeah, I mean, first, obviously, is anytime you get the Kentucky Derby winner and he wins again, it kind of it excites the crowd. So that was a great experience for the people that came out. The idea of the rain and everything else, I mean, still had 134,000 people that came out, and it made it probably to them a little bit special. They'll remember that day a little bit more. The handle was still good. I mean, it was a big surprise, unexpected to me. I thought we would take a big hit, down 4.4%, but the Preakness itself was actually up. So, you know, in all, it was a great day. The new renovations that Belinda's introducing and the new aspects of the tent and everything went spectacular. The celebrities were great. So, I mean, all in all, I mean, I think it was a really positive experience again, and it continues to grow forward. The big event days in the industry are continuing to get bigger.
Tim, much has been talked about the future of the Preakness at Pimlico. You had a press conference last week, and you indicated that it's going to take a lot to keep it in Maryland. What is your vision in terms of maybe keeping it at Pimlico, or perhaps looking to Laurel, which is halfway between Baltimore and Washington, D.C., and is a larger facility, a much larger facility? And what are the pros and cons of that?
Yeah, it started, the first initial looking at this started with a consolidation, right? Why, as a private company, are we operating two tracks that are so close to each other demographically? And then actually, Pimlico was the first site we looked at, right? The property wasn't as valuable as Laurel. Would it be a place where we could have a day in and day out meet, have all the racing move over there, and develop the Laurel property or sell it off at that time? That was probably 5-6 years ago. Then when we kind of put it all together and looked at everything with a train station going through the property, 300 acres at Laurel, knowing that we needed a complete rebuild at Pimlico in comparison to Laurel, then we started to spur our thoughts in the other direction. You know, obviously being conscious of the historical element of it, being conscious of the Baltimoreans that absolutely love the event and feel that it's like an attack on them. We're trying to work through all of that, and we said, okay, openly, we will look at the options through the Maryland Stadium Authority to see if there made economic sense of staying there through a subsidy from the state or the city to build the facility, run the big spectacular event there, and continue to focus on day in and day out racing at Laurel with the Maryland Million, the DC International, and even a Breeders' Cup event. So, I mean, everything was on the table, and everything's still on the table. The last thing we want to do, though, is to sit back and kind of hold the gun to the state's or the city's head saying, either build us a stadium. We've never said that. We said, if you guys feel strongly enough and want to look into that, we'll actually contribute into an economic study that says, what would it look like, how much would it cost, and do we need to do it? The one thing that I can say I'm proud about since I got there is that we've introduced to everybody, and everyone agrees today, that we can't kick the can down the road anymore. The customer experience and the elevation of the experience that you're supposed to have at a Triple Crown race cannot happen in that facility. And it's no one's fault. It's an 1870 building. We can continue to change the electrical and the plumbing, but it still doesn't give the experience that a great race like that should have.
What would Laurel look like with all the money that you could pour into that facility if you were to eventually transfer all of your racing to Laurel? I haven't been to Laurel since 1988. I know it's when I was there, it was gorgeous. I can't imagine what it looks like now with all the renovations you've done and what you might be able to do in the future. But what would racing look like at Laurel with your vision?
Yeah, we have a really good vision of where 75, 80,000 people, so it would be a condensed version of what the Preakness looks like today. I mean, we'd still have an area on the far turn where we would have the concert goers. We'd have down the stretch, because the building only goes to the 16th pole, would be the corporate village. Right. And then we'd have these sky suites and sky boxes. But the element of 70, 80,000 would be an original rollout with the option to expand every single year, almost similar to what the Kentucky Derby's done. So the idea is to try to roll it out with 70,000, but each year add another 5,000 or 10,000, depending on supply and demand. So, being conscious of the everyday guy and making sure that they get into experience, and we see the growth that we've been seeing at the Preakness on a big event. We also have to make sure that the person that wants to pay $3,000 or $4,000 for a seat, that there's accommodations for them, and we're not just taking the money in the same old building, we're providing a better experience. So we have a vision in our head of what Laurel would look like, and I tell you, one of the things that we get at Pimlico through 10 years of studies and surveys after ticket purchases is the number one knock, which people have acknowledged, is not being able to see the other side of the racetrack. That infield that we build up, that's beautiful and stuff for the people that are experiencing it inside, is the people inside the building paying a ticket price can't see the other side. And me, when we talk about a historical value and a real sportsman of the game, I think we should be able to see the other side. And people that are in the building paying a high ticket value that have to watch it on TV have said to us, well, I could watch it at home for that kind of money. So I think the Laurel experience from a racing element would be a better experience.
Tim, before anybody listening hits the panic button, and I'm guessing North Baltimore would be kind of a vicinity where that would happen, what's a time frame for you in a perfect world for this change of not kicking the can down the road anymore to happen?
It's a great question. So what we're doing is we have a stadium, the second phase of the Maryland Stadium Authority study coming in. It's a $600,000 study with experts from Kansas City, Kentucky. Everybody's looking at what a rebuilt Preakness would look like and what the infrastructure and how it would help the community in the surrounding areas. When that comes rolling out at the end of the year, that's going to tell a story on what do we really need to have a Preakness that is not just even good for the next 5 years, what a Preakness looks like 100 years from now when we're not here. That we're the stewards of a very valuable and important historical race, and we all have to look at what it looks like 100 years from now. So when that study comes in at the end of the year, it's going to be able to tell us a lot more. It's going to be able to tell the state a lot more on what the commitment is. As a private company, listen, we want to be conscious of the local area. We want to be good corporate citizens of Baltimore and the state of Maryland, and we all should be involved in this process like we are. But in the end, if the city and state feel strong enough that this is the place to keep it and the historical value for the next 100 years belongs here, then there's a price tag that comes along with that.
Sure.
You know, I remember back in the 60s, the Belmont Stakes was actually run at Aqueduct for a while, a few days, because they were renovating Belmont. So it's not like the Preakness couldn't function in its current role at a track that is just basically halfway between Baltimore and Washington. I don't have a great deal of sentiment towards buildings. That's just me. I understand that people who live there would like to see it. I've seen Yankee Stadium torn down. I've seen the Cowboy Stadium torn down. I've seen Boston Garden torn down. What's wrong with starting a new tradition? And that would be at Laurel.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's I believe in the history, 7 or 8 years it wasn't run at Old Hilltop.
Right.
It was relocated in different areas. Yeah. If you tore the whole building down and rebuilt the building, it's actually not the same. It's on the same piece of land, but it's not the same. No. You know, from a financial perspective, from a private business, there's nothing to talk about. But because we're being conscious of the local neighborhood, and we also believe that just by knocking it down and rebuilding a racetrack doesn't rejuvenate an entire area. There has to be a much bigger commitment from the city and the state of what and how we rejuvenate an entire area, which really doesn't fall under our business model, but
your obligation.
Good, but being a good corporate citizen, it's something we should definitely look at.
Over the last couple of years, been some really exciting things happen at Stronach Group. We've got the Rainbow Six is a huge success down at Gulfstream Park. The Pegasus World Cup, the richest race in all the world, also at Gulfstream. What other things is Stronach Group looking to do? The invent of XBTV, just to throw that out there, selfish, shameless plug for us, but What other things Stronach Group right now looking at as far as maybe expanding some of those ideas or looking down the line at some newer ones?
Yeah, and the XBTV thing just alone, I mean, the idea of streaming, a television streaming network, which seems like more and more people are ripping up the cable boxes and going to streaming so they can watch on their own time and everything else.
My kids.
Yeah, all kids, right?
Yeah.
There's this Hulu and
Roku.
Yeah,
and,
Roku and
we
all
got
these.
it all.
Yeah, so that's the right direction. I mean, we're positive and we're trying to be cutting edge and be in that direction. As sports wagering comes, how do we incorporate, basically a sports wagering platform that has all this excitement? But, racing, we want to continue to make sure that we do a really good job with racing because we think that it is a sport that has not been fully evolved yet. We think we got left behind for some reason or another, not taking care of a monopoly that we had in place. But there's a lot of excitement from the Stronach Group. I mean, we actually first and foremost put racing first and the format of racing, and then try to grow the entertainment experience around it. So, the Pegasus World Cup, these huge big days are important. And if we look at someday DC International coming back, we're a true international race on the grass, similar to the Pegasus World Cup, and then you have the Preakness, and then you have maybe even a Tokyo Cup day out here or something, and we put six of these huge event days on our calendar and mix them with the day in and day out racing, which is intricate and very important for the economic health of the sport with the breeding industry, green spaces, the jobs we provide economically, all of that stuff we look at. And, in the end, I mean, we have a passionate 86-year-old gentleman, Mr. Frank Stronach, right, that has a love for the sport. He's passing the baton over to his daughter, who is as passionate as he is about being successful and having his legacy continue. His thing is, how do I make racing successful and continue on in perpetuity at better levels than it was when he took it over? So those are the things and the models that the Stronach Group is looking for.
Tim, I think I first set foot at Santa Anita in 1958. Just a little kid.
15 years later, I was born, by the way, but go ahead.
Anyway, I remember driving up here and I see this big green grandstand. It was like, like the Wizard of Oz, where you see this big emerald green city. And I've been, fascinated by it and enjoyed racing for so many decades. But it's pretty much the same place it's ever been, which is on one way good. It's very good. But I know that you have some ideas to make it even better. And I would like to ask you what you're looking forward to and what's the future at Santa Anita?
Yeah, so the future at all of our facilities, and Santa Anita included, is as Belinda continues to elevate the legacy of Frank, is how do you take these great racing facilities, do a really good job with that, but then also take them and develop them into entertainment parks around racing to actually help racing evolve. But from my perspective, from a racing perspective, there are models that need to be looked at that haven't been looked at for so long, whether it's Notwink and Scott Wink and Stable and Vannon. As the industry changes, we have to be adapt to change.
And those would be simulcast outlets in state for those listening that don't understand the acronyms.
The complication of is... we're looking at older OTBs like that happened in New York in the model where people bet in the state off-track betting, and now people, once again, as we talked about streaming and stuff, move into an ADW platform where they can bet at home or bet at the facility they go to. We're seeing a decline in that kind of handle. So we're seeing a shift, actually. We're not even seeing the handle disappear. We're seeing it shift in a different direction. We have to be prepared to work with the TOC, the breeders, industry leaders, the Racing Commission, the legislators, to evolve and but our main focus should be how do we drive people back to the racetrack to live through the experience of owning a racehorse, being involved in a racehorse or in a partnership, and betting on track. I mean, so
You can't catch the bug unless you're here.
You got to be here. You
gotta
can't have,
see it.
yeah, we can't have these tracks. I mean, people have said, well, 90% of the handle happens off track. You could go buy a place in Omaha, Nebraska, open up a track, put good racing, and they're going to bet it. But you won't grow the sport that way.
Right.
People have to go to the game, they have to see it, and they have to participate in it.
So what kind of changes here on the physical side of the plant at Santa Anita are you looking at? I know both of us agree for sure that we'd like to see more grass racing, and sometimes that's not possible, which is one of the reasons why I love Laurel so much, because in the summer when you can run as many grass races as you want with the big course and all that.
Sure.
But here in California, it's not that easy. We just don't have the room unless you do some changes. Are there going to be changes physically to the racetrack?
Yeah, I mean, listen, when you handle and what doesn't matter if it's a guy down the street that owns a grocery store or hardware store, there's changes. There's complications in business that we have to address. Right. The first thing is to acknowledge them. One is, the grass course is too small. So what's the first thing you need to do is look at the options on how do we expand it? How does it make sense? How do we have increased race days if we don't have an expanded grass course? So all of those have to be looked at, right? Additional stabling. How do we make it more functional for the trainer, the everyday owner, the more smaller people in the game to stay in the game longer and survive. Right. Purse distribution, more turf racing, more ownership. All of these things go together. There's no silver bullets. There's all little topics. And the thing is, we can talk about them all day long, and everybody in this game, like you guys, pretty much know some of the things we have to do. But if we don't get out there and do them, think tanks are fine, but do tanks are better. So we need to do these things. And I'm one that doesn't just like to draw for the rest of my life and not build. I'd like to definitely draw and then build. So that's what we're looking at.
Are you getting cooperation from industry leaders outside of Stronach Group in that vision?
So when I first came here, it was a little bit of a struggle, right? Okay, here comes a guy that wants to come in and he wants to cheapen the quality of racing right away, right? By adding more races and running more days. The first thing I try to do is say, what does the customer want? Not what does the horseman want, what does the racetrack want? What does the customer want? The customer is the economic engine of the sport. If he stops betting, then purses go down, revenues go down, we can't be sustainable. So first thing I say is, okay, what is the customer looking for? Well, the customer's looking for bigger fields. The first thing he's looking for. Quality racing is intricate for sure. There has to be the great quality racing. But in and day out, we have to find how we have quantity too. And that's the first thing. So when I look at the Gulfstream model, and we've been beaten up a little bit because we run a lot of grass racing, we run a lot of cheap racing, but you look at Gulfstream when it used to run 60 days, every single graded stake race that is there is still there, and some of them are running for more money than what they used to. But what we did is we've strapped in between those great races with a 5-horse field and a $300,000 race with a 1-to-9 shot. We put a 14-horse field with a little bit of lesser quality horse on both sides of that to make that more of an intriguing horizontal bet. That's what the customer wants. And what I want the people here, the TOC, the breeders, is say, have confidence and trust in me that we want to expand what racing looks like. We want to have a bigger card where we mix quality with quantity, and believe me, that's what the customer wants. And proven case in point is Gulfstream Park has gone from $595 million in handle, although they've expanded their calendar, to $1.8 billion, or 18% of the market. So we think we've done something right there. We've seen $600 million of increases in Laurel, and now we're ready to see some increases here. We're up $60 million here. A lot of it's by adding extra races. And if I can just go on for another second and to explain, you get a $35,000 maiden race on the dirt, and there's 16 horses in it. If you run that with 16 horses, 4 people got excluded and want to know when they're going to run next. 4 people run 9, 10, 11, and 12 and look for another place to go. That's an easy race to split. Not take out any other race, maiden, special weight, or allowance. Have 2 races, create 2 winners, create 4 guys that finish 1, 2, 3, 4, and other guys didn't run too bad. Those are the kind of examples we need. That doesn't cheapen up your race, and that adds more to the card and gives the bettors more opportunity and more growth.
And I know you got another question, Jeff, but that was all off the top of his head. He's got nothing in front of him. I know you can't see it, but he's got nothing in front of him to quote those numbers.
The only one other aspect I wanted to cover would be, and I know this is down the road, but obviously with the Supreme Court ruling of gaming, this is obviously something the Stronach Group is going to want to look at and get a part of.
Yeah, not even down the road. Like we were ahead of this a year ago in Maryland. We were very close. We were like one vote away from getting it approved so that it would go to the voters. The speaker, Mike Miller, was a little bit intimidated by the casino push, not sure that it would win a vote, so decided to table it. So when we talk about jurisdictions, we're in Washington, D.C., Baltimore, San Francisco, L.A., Fort Lauderdale, Miami for sports wagering. I'm one of the only guys in the company that's not sure how the economics of it is this huge windfall of money because the margins are so small. But for sure, this is another added amenity. You have to build out a great sports book. We're doing it at Laurel already. We'll be doing it here at Santa Anita. We're going to build out these rooms where we have guys come out, or girls, and come out, be able to bet a game. We're hoping that it's a brick and mortar presence at first and not online. Right. And we can sell to the legislators that it's not an expansion of gaming if it's already happening at a brick and mortar facility. Right. And how do we incorporate that new customer that comes out to bet sports, billions of dollars in sports, and still maybe in between games learns to bet horses, and how do we tie parlays together where you bet a horse and bet a game. So for sure, we're all over it, and we're meeting guys and we understand it. Once again, I'm not sure that it's anything like slots where you get this whole windfall of purses and money. Right. But the bottom line is it's definitely an amenity that you can't pass up. And then when you talk about bringing people to these facilities, you need to have it right.
Tim, I'm going to end with this. I've heard you say a couple of really positive things that struck a chord with me. First of all, the customer is the driving force in racing. The second thing you said is that Stronach Group puts racing first. Internet poker, Indian casinos, sports gaming, all that's great. But we put racing first at Stronach Group. If there's a message that you want people to look at when they think Stronach Group, what would that be?
Yeah, we're a racing company, and just to touch on those points, wherever the great thing about California, and I want to keep everybody's heads up, the great thing about California, it's run without any subsidies. California Racing funds its purses basically on its pari-mutuel handle without any subsidies. Those are the tracks that will survive in the end.
You're not kidding.
Tracks that are getting this subsidies from slots, sooner or later, that money will be clawed back. Now, where we operate, where we have, luckily, get funding from slots is a little bit in Florida, very small, 10% of the total purse handle, and in Laurel, much more. We continue to pound to the horsemen, and they know supportively that you need to use this as a crutch to build your business back, because in the end, pari-mutuel handle, self-sustainable economic model is the only thing that will make a business survive. And the other thing that we're trying to make the horsemen convinced of is these property values are worth so much. Hollywood Park, Bay Meadows, tracks throughout the country, we see every day closing because the property values outweigh the return. We're saying to the horsemen, we're truly partners with you. How do we drive more pari-mutuel handle, which is the way we both win, without subsidies, to make our game be a model that lasts economically forever? And the Stronach Group is truly committed to that. How? By hiring racing people that know the racing industry and not hiring casino people to run their racetracks. So,
I don't know, Jeff, you a believer? You good with that?
I am down, man. I am absolutely down.
Tim, really, thanks so much for spending the time with us. Listeners are going to get a kick out of this, and we're really excited about the future of Stronach Group and appreciate you coming down here to the XB TV set and talk to us.
Yeah, thanks. Congratulations. You guys got nominated for some awards. So
the Kelly Awards, yeah.
Yeah, so that's great. And we appreciate all you do for the industry, too.
Well, this is a special episode of the Backstretch. COO, Stronach Group, Tim Ritvo, Jeff Siegel and Aaron Vercruysse. I'm guessing Tim worries about more than just the Backstretch, but that's the name of the show. We'll see you next week.